Hello everyone, I welcome you all to my channel Revealing Concepts. In today's video, we would be starting with a new playlist, or I would say a new concept, wherein I would be talking about the story of industrialization in India. Like how did industrialization happen in India? It did happen across the world uh, during the Industrial Revolution, but how did this Industrial Revolution ka impact effect had an impact on our country, that is India. So we would be learning it in different phases. In today's class, we would be learning the two phases of it, the phase 1 and phase 2. And in the later videos, we would be learning the remaining phases. I suppose it would take about 3 videos to complete the entire story. I would be explaining it in terms of story only, but yes, there would be certain factual things which I would have to narrate to you just by reading. Some references would be put on the other hand in terms of images wherever needed. Also, if you have any doubt or if you think that some facts are quoted wrong, you can comment down and tell me so that I could rectify them. So let's begin. As I told you that we would be learning this in a story format, and hence the title, The Story of Industrialization in India. How did industrialization actually took place in India? Before that, there is a background, or you would say, or I would say the phase 1 of it, where you need to know that in India, industrialization, or I would say industries, already existed. It was after the arrival of Britishers that our so-called domestic industries collapsed. And later on again, we revived ourselves. So this entire story we would be learning. Jisme first phase or phase 1 is the golden age of India's handloom and handicraft industry. In this, you can also consider the spices industry as well. So we Indians had a great start. If you see, the phase 1 itself is known as the golden age. It means ki we had the caliber, we had the capacity, and we did deliver to the world one of the best textiles, one of the best handicrafts, one of the best spices the world could ever experience. And we did that, and hence this phase is called as the golden age. Now this golden age started during the medieval times. So here there are periods which have been given, and her period ke corresponding kuch features hai. We would be knowing them, we would be reading about them. So the first period in the medieval times is the Gupta Empire. We all are well aware of this empire, a very famous empire which reigned from 4th to 6th century CE, that is Common Era. And inke time pe, during the period of Gupta Empire, the trade was being done in terms of textile, silk and ivory. These 3 materials were being exported to different parts of the nation at a very, very large scale. Then when we come to the Chola Empire, which reigned between 9th to 13th century CE, us time pe we actually expanded our trade boundaries. Earlier we used to, do inter-nation trade, intra-nation trade we would say. Now we expanded our trade boundaries and we started the maritime spice trade, wherein we traded pepper, we traded cardamom, we traded turmeric, ginger with the Southeastern Asian nations. तो हम लोगों ने अभी एशिया का साउथ ईस्ट पार्ट टारगेट करने की कोशिश की. Look how wonderful it was during the medieval times that even though the invention at that time, the level of technology was not at its zenith, then too we reached the southeastern part of India, southeastern part of Asia, जहाँ पे we traded spices with those people. उसके अलावा textile industry was something which India had a great hold over. So textile trade was also been done during the time of Chola Empire. Over the entire medieval period, textile trade एक ऐसा trade है जिसपे इंडिया की बड़ी ही पकड़ थी. India had its hold over the textile industry, and the cotton clothes, I would say the muslin cloth, the silk that people used to weave in our nation, it used to reach different parts of the world. Now, then we come to the next very important empire, which is the Delhi Sultanate. तो इन सारों ने बिटवीन 13 to 16 सेंचुरी बहुत सारी चीजें की, जैसे बंगाल और गुजरात में these two states, I would say, were well known for their cotton cultivation, for the making of cotton cloths also, and at the same time they were very well known silk weaving centers as well. So यहाँ पे cotton का cultivation ही नहीं बल्कि cotton and silk weaving centers भी बड़े ही proper तरीके से establish किए गए थे. So this was the major contribution of Delhi Sultanate. Now, my dear viewers, I want you all to note that all these industries, I would say, be it the spice industry, the textile industry, that is the cotton weaving and the silk weaving centers, they flourished because they received patronage from their local rulers. The kings, the emperors who ruled back at that time in these very particular periods, they provided a huge amount of patronage to these local workers. Now next, one of the contemporary empire to that of the Delhi Sultanate was the Vijayanagar Empire, which was in the southern part of India. We all know Vijayanagar Empire is a very important, you would say, kingdom. And unke time pe, that is between 14th to 16th century, they started the spice trade with the Arabs and the Portuguese. So now here the Europe part of it, the Middle Eastern part of it started coming into picture. So, during the medieval times, India started expanding its trade boundaries. If you see, the overall performance of Indians was not at all bad. In fact, it was one of the best back at that time. So here, if you remember, the Portuguese, that is Vasco da Gama, arrived in India around 1498 mein, he arrived in India, and then he came to know the availability of spices in India, which he took back again to his own country, and he sold there at a very huge price, and he got a lot of profit from it. And this is something that attracted all the European powers, you would say, or the Europeans to come to India. So ये विजयनगर एम्पायर के टाइम पे हुआ था कि अरब्स और पोर्चुगीज के साथ हम लोगों ने अपना स्पाइस ट्रेड एस्टैब्लिश किया. Now when I say spice trade, it has got a multiple spices, but some well known were, as I told you, black pepper, cardamom was there. So these were the spices which were hugely traded back at that time. उसके बाद सबसे important was the Mughal Empire, which was during the period of 16th to 18th century CE. Now this is one of the most important, I would say, empire during the medieval times in terms of trade. यहाँ पे our Indian textile industry reached its zenith. It was at its peak. We had even the handicraft industry was well known back at that time, right from pottery to iron tools, etc. were hugely demanded all over the world. Now बंगाल, गुजरात एंड डेक्कन में जो कोरोमंडल कोस्ट था, मतलब तमिलनाडु के बाजू में जो कोस्ट है, सो डेक्कन में कोरोमंडल कोस्ट, in Gujarat and in Bengal, these three were known as the global textile hub. They became the global textile hub because from here, textile was being exported to many parts of the world, be it Africa, be it Europe, be it Middle East, be it Southeast Asian nations. सब जगह पे बंगाल, गुजरात और कोरोमंडल कोस्ट से टेक्सटाइल्स को एक्सपोर्ट किया जाता था at a very huge rate, I would say. So as I told you, at this time, during the Mughal Empire, cotton, silk, indigo, spices, everything was being, I would say, traded to different parts of the world. So if you want to conclude exactly phase 1 में हो क्या रहा था, so as I have given the title is absolutely justified with whatever I have explained now. कि ये गोल्डन एज था हमारे इंडियन हैंडलूम इंडस्ट्री के लिए, हमारे इंडियन हैंडीक्राफ्ट इंडस्ट्री के लिए एंड स्पाइस ट्रेड के लिए, बिकॉज वी ट्रेडेड अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड. टू समराइज फेज 1, आई वुड से कि the cotton from Bengal, cotton was being traded from Bengal, Gujarat, Coromandel coast. बंगाल एंड कश्मीर का सिल्क बड़ा ही फेमस था. these regions were known for their production of silk. Apart from that, Kashmir ke woolen shawls were in high demand in the European nations, jahan pe the winter used to be harsh. Apart from that, the dyes were being made out of indigo and safflower plants, and they were also being exported. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट स्पाइसेस की अगर हम बात करें तो ब्लैक पेपर, कार्डमम, क्लोव्स, cinnamon, ginger, turmeric, sugar, jaggery and many other spices were being traded from India to other parts of the nations. So overall, we would say that India was doing great, absolutely great, until the arrival of the East India Company. The phase 2 starts with the arrival of the foreign storm, which is the East India Company in the year of 1600. So the phase 2 is named as the period of deindustrialization and economic exploitation, because the foreign storm, that is the East India Company, which arrived in India in the year 1600, led to deindustrialization and total economic exploitation of India. What exactly happened? So सबसे पहले, when they arrived in India, what they did was they established their factories, they established their companies, I would say, their manufacturing units in different parts of India. Now, what was the impact of the arrival of this foreign storm, I would say? The first thing which happened was the destruction of Indian handicraft and the artisans industry. As we all have seen in the phase 1, that Indian silk and cotton textile was being transported to the Southeastern Asian nations, to the African, to European and to the Middle Eastern nations. So now the course of this trade totally changed. The local textile, that is the Dhaka muslin cloth or the Banarasi silk, which we Indians produced, was totally been stopped. Now, why did this happen? The British East India Company came up with certain policies which made the trade with foreign countries very, very difficult for India. They imposed tariffs, they imposed trade restrictions, which led to the destruction of the Indian handicrafts and the artisans industry. So I would say that the arrival of the foreign storm was actually one of the most worst thing that could happen to the Indian domestic industry. Because of this, the immediate impact was deindustrialization. Since the domestic industries were not able to trade freely and openly with the world, that led to the downfall of these domestic industries, which led to deindustrialization. Why do I say that? Earlier, India was a major exporter of finished produced goods. Just as I told you, we were known for our muslin cloths, we were known for our shawls, which were made out of the woolen cloth, woolen cotton, I would say, or the Banarasi silk, which was being made. We Indians were well known for this finished textile. But with the arrival of the East India Company and with the deindustrialization that was slowly and gradually taking place in India, there was a shift from India being an exporter of finished produced goods to an exporter of just raw materials. Now we were being forced to just produce jute, cotton or indigo in terms of raw materials and export these to the European nations so that they would use them and produce finished goods. And those finished goods were then transported or exported back to India. So Indians then became net importers of the British foreign goods. This led to huge economic dependency of India on them. And since we tried to, or we imported the British finished goods from the East India Company, from the European nations, this again led to the downfall of the local industries that existed back at that time. The third thing which happened was these European rulers, they forced the cultivation of cash crops. The cash crops like indigo, jute, cotton, they were forcing the Indians to cultivate these cash crops on majority of the land. Now these were being transported back to the European nations in terms of raw materials, and we just now saw what happened because of it. But apart from this, there was one more impact of it, which was that since majority of the portion of land covered was covered with the cash crops, that is why the food crops had got a very less amount of land. A very less amount of food crops were being cultivated because the preference was given to the cash crops not by Indians but by the East India Company, by the Europeans, by the colonists who rule in our nation. So they forced us to cultivate cash crops, which led to the shortage of food crops, which eventually led to many famines back at that time. And the fourth important thing was the exploitation of Indian artisans. The East India Company, they hired Indian workers to work in their factories, to work in their companies, to work for them and produce goods for them. But in return, they did not give them even the minimum wages that they deserved. They were being exploited by giving them no wages or bare minimum wages, I would say, and the conditions under which they worked were very, very exploitative in nature. All of this impacted India in a very, very negative manner. This was the phase where India saw a huge downfall in its so-called well-known textile and spice industry, which it had established during the medieval times. Just one foreign company coming to India and having a larger impact on the India's industry, the textile industry and the spice industry, was something which was of a major concern for Indians. So my dear viewers, in today's video, we have learned about the two phases of the story of industrialization in India, in which we saw that the first phase was a golden age, which was an age where the trade in India flourished under Indian rulers. But in phase two, we saw unfortunate things happening in terms of trade. So I hope you all have understood what has been taught in today's video. If you have any doubt, if you have any suggestions to give with respect to whatever has been taught, I would request you all to put them down into the comment section. Also, I would request you all to please subscribe to my channel and share these videos with your friends and your families so that you would gain important knowledge with respect to our India. Thank you so much and see you soon in the next video.